Welcome. In the intricate dance of human interaction, influence is a constant. But when does persuasion cross the line into manipulation? Tonight, we delve deeper into the shadows of psychological control, exploring advanced tactics designed to sway, to bend, and sometimes to break the will. These are not tricks for the faint of heart, nor are they tools to be wielded. This is an exploration of the human mind's vulnerabilities, so that you might recognize the currents and navigate them with greater awareness. The sunk cost fallacy exploitation. You've invested so much time, energy, emotion, money. Walking away now would mean all of that was for nothing, wouldn't it? Or so they want you to believe. This is the exploitation of the sunk cost fallacy, a cognitive trap where the more resources you pour into a failing endeavor, the harder it becomes to abandon it. Imagine a failing business. Month after month, it bleeds money. Logic screams to cut losses, but the owner thinks, I've already put my life savings into this. Another loan, a little more time, and it has to turn around. They're not just investing in the business anymore. They're trying to validate their past investments. Manipulators understand this deeply. They might encourage you to invest more in a toxic relationship, a fraudulent scheme, or a flawed ideology, knowing that each additional contribution, be it emotional labor or financial input, strengthens your psychological chains. They don't need to convince you it's a good idea now. They just need to remind you of how much you've already sacrificed. The more you've sunk, the more you're willing to sink, desperately trying to turn a loss into a win, even as the ship goes under. The tragic irony: the only way to truly reclaim your resources is to accept the loss and walk away. But the fallacy whispers that perseverance will somehow rewrite the past. Dehumanization, the erosion of empathy. How do you make someone do the unthinkable to another human being? You make them believe the other is not human at all. Dehumanization is the psychological process of denying humanness to others, stripping them of their individuality, their right to empathy, and their moral standing. It's a precursor to some of history's darkest chapters, from genocides to systemic oppression. Think of propaganda during wartime. The enemy is rarely portrayed as fathers, mothers, or children. They are depicted as vermin, monsters, or an undifferentiated, threatening mass. This language isn't accidental. It serves to switch off the natural human capacity for empathy. If the other is not fully human, then moral rules don't apply. In abusive relationships, a partner might consistently refer to the victim with degrading terms, mock their intelligence, or treat them as an object. This isn't just cruelty. It's a strategy to make the abuser feel justified in their actions, and to make the victim internalize this diminished sense of self. Cults often use dehumanization against outsiders or former members, labeling them as unenlightened, demonic, or lost, thereby reinforcing the group's superiority and isolating members from external support. The process is insidious. It starts with labels, then jokes, then exclusion, and can escalate to justifications for violence. Recognizing dehumanizing language, whether aimed at you or others, is the first step in resisting this dangerous psychological weapon. Obfuscation and strategic ambiguity. It's complicated. We're exploring various avenues. That depends on a number of factors. Ever received an answer that left you more confused than when you started? This is the realm of obfuscation and strategic ambiguity. The deliberate use of vague, confusing, or indirect language to avoid clarity, evade responsibility, or maintain control. Politicians are masters of this. When asked a direct question about a controversial policy, they might respond with a flood of jargon, pivot to an unrelated topic, or offer a statement so nebulous it can be interpreted in multiple ways. The goal isn't to inform, but to manage perception, to appear to be saying something without actually committing to anything. Corporations use it in fine print, in crisis management, or when downplaying negative news. In personal relationships, a manipulative individual might use ambiguity to avoid making promises, to keep their options open, or to make you feel insecure. Maybe we'll see each other this weekend. I'm not sure what my plans are yet. Can be a way to keep you on the hook without any real commitment. The power of strategic ambiguity lies in its ability to create uncertainty. When you're uncertain, you're less likely to challenge, more likely to fill in the blanks with your own hopes or fears, and ultimately, easier to control. The manipulator remains unaccountable, while you're left trying to decipher smoke signals. Clarity is a threat to those who thrive in the fog. The false equivalence ploy. Sure, I lied, but you forgot to take out the trash last week. We're both at fault here, aren't we? This is the false equivalence ploy, a manipulative tactic where two completely different actions or situations are presented as morally or logically equivalent, typically to minimize one's own wrongdoing or to derail a valid criticism. This tactic is a favorite in arguments and debates. Imagine a public figure caught in a major scandal. Instead of addressing the issue, they might point to a minor misstep by an opponent or a critic, saying, well, they're not perfect either. The aim is to muddy the waters, to create an illusion that all sins are equal, thereby deflecting from the severity of their own actions. In interpersonal conflicts, if you call someone out on hurtful behavior, they might retort by bringing up a completely unrelated, minor grievance you committed in the past. This isn't about genuine reconciliation. It's about evading responsibility and making you feel unjustified in your complaint. It works because it taps into our desire for fairness and our discomfort with hypocrisy. However, the equivalence is almost always a distortion. Stealing a cookie is not equivalent to embezzling funds. A minor disagreement is not equivalent to emotional abuse. By equating the two, the manipulator attempts to dilute their culpability and shut down further discussion. Recognizing this tactic is crucial. Don't let the comparison trick you into thinking all actions carry the same weight. Shifting goalposts, the unwinnable game. You've worked tirelessly, met every demand, achieved every target they set. You finally reach what you thought was the finish line, only to find the goalposts have moved. The criteria have changed. What was once good enough is now woefully inadequate. This is the manipulative tactic of shifting goalposts, ensuring you are perpetually striving, never quite measuring up, and always under their control. This is common in toxic work environments. A boss might initially say, just complete this project by Friday, and you'll be in line for a promotion. You deliver. Then it's, actually, we also need you to mentor the new intern and take on these extra responsibilities. Then we'll talk. The promotion never materializes because the criteria for achieving it are constantly changing. In abusive relationships, a partner might demand changes in your behavior, appearance, or social life. You comply, hoping to finally achieve peace or approval, only to find new demands emerging. If you just lost some weight, I'd be more attracted to you. You lose the weight. Now it's your friends I don't like. The goal isn't your improvement, it's your unending effort and their sustained control. This tactic exploits the human desire for achievement and validation. By keeping the target of success always just out of reach, the manipulator fosters a sense of inadequacy and dependence. The victim internalizes the belief that they are the problem, that they just need to try a little harder, rather than recognizing they're playing a game designed to be unwinnable. Emotional reasoning, feelings as false facts. I feel like you don't love me, therefore you don't. I feel anxious about this project, so it must be doomed to fail. I feel like they're judging me, so they probably are. This is emotional reasoning, a cognitive distortion where someone believes that what they feel must be true, regardless of objective evidence. While a natural human tendency, manipulators skillfully exploit this by inflaming your emotions and then presenting those feelings as proof of their narrative. If a manipulator wants you to doubt your partner, they might not present facts. Instead, they'll subtly plant seeds of jealousy or insecurity. Don't you feel like she's a bit too friendly with her coworker? Once you start feeling jealous, that feeling becomes your evidence, even if your partner has done nothing wrong. Cult leaders often use emotionally charged language and create intense group experiences. If you feel euphoric and connected within the group, you might conclude, "This feels like truth, therefore it must be." The manipulator's goal is to bypass your logical thinking by appealing directly to your emotional state. They know that strong emotions can override rational thought. So, they might provoke fear, guilt, or excitement, and then use your emotional reaction as leverage. You feel guilty, don't you? That's because you know you're in the wrong. The defense against this is to learn to pause when experiencing strong emotions and ask, what is the actual evidence here, separate from how I'm feeling? Feelings are valid, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. Projection, the accusatory mirror. They are the ones being dishonest, yet they accuse you of lying. They are riddled with insecurity, but they call you needy. They are the ones cheating, but they relentlessly question your fidelity. This is projection, a psychological defense mechanism where individuals attribute their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or motives onto another person. Manipulators use this not just as a defense, but as an offensive tactic to confuse, destabilize, and control. Imagine a partner who is secretly unfaithful. They might become hypercritical of your interactions with others, accusing you of flirting or having wandering eyes. This serves multiple purposes for them. Firstly, it deflects attention from their own behavior. Secondly, it keeps you on the defensive, too busy justifying your innocence to scrutinize theirs. Thirdly, it can be a form of gaslighting, making you doubt your own perceptions and even feel guilty for things you haven't done. In a work setting, an incompetent manager might constantly blame their team for failures that are a direct result of their own poor leadership. They project their inadequacy onto others to protect their ego and position. Projection is a powerful tool because it's so disorienting for the victim. You find yourself defending against accusations that are bizarrely out of character for you, often reflecting the very traits the manipulator possesses. It's like they're holding up a mirror, but it's their own reflection you're being forced to confront as if it were yours. The key is to recognize the pattern. Are the accusations wildly out of sync with your reality, yet perfectly descriptive of the accuser? Weaponized incompetence, strategic ineptitude. "Oh, I'd love to help with that, but I'm just so bad at it." "You're much better." "I always mess that up. It's probably best if you handle it." This isn't always genuine modesty or self-awareness. Sometimes it's weaponized incompetence, the act of feigning inability or ignorance to avoid undesirable tasks, responsibilities, or efforts, thereby shifting the burden onto someone else. This tactic is prevalent in households and workplaces. A partner might forget how to load the dishwasher correctly every time, ensuring the other partner eventually gives up and does it themselves. An employee might repeatedly make mistakes on a tedious part of their job until the manager reassigns it to a more capable colleague. The incompetent individual achieves their goal, evading the task, without ever having to directly refuse or confront. They maintain an air of plausible deniability. I'm not lazy, I'm just not good at it. This differs from simply playing dumb to gather information. Here, the feigned ineptitude is a direct play to offload work or responsibility. It can be incredibly frustrating for the person who ends up picking up the slack. They might feel guilty for being annoyed. They can't help it if they're bad at it. Or simply too exhausted to keep fighting the same battle. Over time, this can lead to significant resentment and an unfair distribution of labor. The manipulator conserves their energy and focuses on what they want to do, all under the guise of being endearingly or frustratingly inept. Semantic manipulation, the war of words. It wasn't a lie, it was a misstatement. It's not an invasion, it's a special military operation. They're not fired, their roles have been restructured. Words have power. Semantic manipulation is the art of twisting language, redefining terms, or using euphemisms to control perception, sanitize reality, and make the unacceptable sound acceptable. This is a cornerstone of propaganda and political spin. By changing the words used to describe an event or policy, manipulators can profoundly alter public reaction. Enhanced interrogation techniques sounds far more palatable than torture, even if the actions are the same. In personal arguments, a manipulator might reframe their aggression as passion or their controlling behavior as caring too much. I wasn't yelling. I was just passionately expressing my point of view. This tactic aims to invalidate your perception of their actions. It can make you doubt whether you have a right to be upset. Corporate jargon is also rife with semantic manipulation. Layoffs become right-sizing or streamlining operations, softening the harsh reality of job losses. The goal is to manage emotions and control the narrative. When language is distorted, the truth becomes a casualty. The manipulator dictates the terms of the discussion, and if you accept their vocabulary, you've already started to accept their version of reality. Pay close attention to the words people choose, especially when discussing sensitive or controversial topics. Are they clarifying or are they cloaking? Dogpiling and mobbing, the crushing consensus. One critical voice might be manageable. Two might be concerning. But what happens when dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of voices rise against you in unison, repeating the same accusations, the same condemnations? This is dogpiling or mobbing, an expansion of public shaming where a group collectively attacks an individual, often online, but also in workplaces or communities. The digital age has amplified this tactic to terrifying levels. A single tweet, a misunderstood comment, or even a fabricated allegation can trigger an online mob. Strangers, feeling safety in numbers and fueled by outrage, often manufactured or amplified by others, descend to tear apart someone's reputation, career, and even their sense of safety. Each individual in the mob feels less personal responsibility for the harm inflicted. They are merely part of a larger righteous chorus. In workplaces, mobbing can occur when a group of colleagues systematically isolates, humiliates, or undermines a target, often to force them out. It might involve spreading rumors, excluding them from meetings, or constantly criticizing their work. The victim feels overwhelmed, gaslighted, and powerless against the collective force. This isn't just criticism, it's a coordinated psychological assault designed to break the target's spirit and enforce conformity or exact revenge. The sheer volume of negativity creates an echo chamber that can make the victim doubt their own sanity and worth. It's the power of social proof weaponized to an extreme. If so many people are saying it, it must be true. Intermittent reinforcement, revisited, the unpredictable hook. We've touched on love bombing, and its subsequent withdrawal, which relies on intermittent reinforcement. But this powerful psychological principle extends far beyond romantic manipulation. It's the unpredictable pattern of rewards and punishments, or affection and neglect, that keeps individuals hooked, always chasing the next hit of positivity. Consider a gambler at a slot machine. They pull the lever again and again. Most pulls result in nothing, but occasionally there's a small win, just enough to keep them playing. The unpredictability is key. If rewards were consistent, the behavior might extinguish when rewards stop. But the intermittent nature keeps hope alive. Maybe the next one will be the big one. In a toxic work environment, a boss might be mostly critical and demanding, but occasionally offer a rare compliment or a small bonus. This infrequent reward can be enough to keep an employee enduring an otherwise miserable job, always hoping for that next moment of validation. In child-rearing, inconsistent affection and discipline can create deep insecurities and an anxious attachment in children, who never know what behavior will elicit love or anger. The core mechanism is the creation of a craving. The brain becomes addicted to the possibility of reward, much like a drug. The victim is kept in a state of perpetual uncertainty, willing to tolerate increasingly poor treatment in the hope of re-experiencing the sporadic good times. This makes the manipulator's control incredibly strong, as the victim is, in essence, self-motivated to continue the cycle. Preemptive defense, justifying before accusation. Now, I know this might sound a bit harsh, but it's for your own good. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but someone has to tell you the truth. Don't take this the wrong way, but these are often the opening salvos of a preemptive defense. The manipulator anticipates potential criticism or negative reactions to what they're about to say or do, and addresses it up front, thereby disarming the listener and framing their subsequent actions in a more favorable light. By acknowledging a potential negative interpretation, they create an illusion of self-awareness and honesty. I know I shouldn't have, but I was just so worried about you, a partner might say after violating your privacy. The worry is positioned as a justification, making it harder for you to focus on the boundary violation. Politicians use this when introducing unpopular policies. This will require sacrifices, but it's essential for our future security. The sacrifice is framed as a necessary evil. This tactic also works by making the listener feel unreasonable if they still react negatively. If the speaker has already acknowledged the potential for offense, your getting offended might make you seem overly sensitive or uncharitable. It's a way of controlling the narrative before the conversation even truly begins. It sets the terms of engagement, often putting the listener on the back foot. They're not just saying something, they're managing your anticipated reaction to it, making it more difficult for you to call out the problematic behavior when it occurs. Victim playing and the martyrdom complex, it's always me who suffers. No one appreciates everything I do. After all I've sacrificed for you. This is the language of the victim or martyr, a manipulative stance where an individual consistently portrays themselves as unfairly treated, wronged, or self-sacrificing to gain sympathy, evade responsibility, and control others through guilt. While genuine victimhood exists, the manipulative victim uses their perceived suffering as a currency. By constantly highlighting their sacrifices or hardships, they make others feel indebted or guilty. You can't leave me now. Look how much I depend on you, how much I've given up for this relationship. This creates a powerful emotional obligation, making it difficult for others to assert their own needs or to disengage. The martyr often takes on burdens, sometimes unnecessarily or performatively. and then broadcasts their suffering to elicit praise or pity. They might sigh dramatically while doing chores or subtly remind everyone of their selflessness. This isn't about genuine altruism. It's about creating an image that makes them appear virtuous and beyond reproach. If you criticize them, you're ungrateful. If you don't cater to their unspoken needs, which are often communicated through their suffering, you're selfish. This tactic is incredibly effective because it plays on our natural empathy and desire to alleviate suffering. However, with a manipulative victim, no amount of care or appreciation is ever enough, because their identity and control are rooted in the continuation of their perceived victimhood. Future faking, selling dreams, controlling today. One day we'll travel the world together. Once I get this promotion, everything will be different for us. Just stick with me, and I promise you a future you've only dreamed of. These are the siren songs of future faking, a manipulative tactic where someone makes grand promises about a wonderful future to gain compliance, loyalty, or resources in the present, with no genuine intention of ever fulfilling those promises. This is a hallmark of narcissistic and manipulative individuals in relationships. They paint a vivid, idyllic picture of what life will be like, creating a powerful hope that keeps their partner invested, even if the current reality is neglectful or abusive. The victim endures present pain for the sake of a promised future that never arrives. Con artists and pyramid scheme recruiters are also experts at future faking. They sell a dream of immense wealth, early retirement, or a life of luxury, all contingent on your immediate investment or participation. The more a person buys into this promised future, the more they are willing to tolerate or sacrifice in the present. Future faking works because it taps into our aspirations and our desire for a better life. The promises are often vague enough to be irrefutable in the short term, one day, soon, but specific enough to be enticing. The manipulator dangles this idealized future like a carrot, always just out of reach, ensuring the victim remains hopeful, compliant, and focused on the manipulator's potential rather than their actual behavior. When the present becomes too unbearable, the manipulator will often refresh the future fake with new, equally hollow promises, restarting the cycle of hope and exploitation. The calculated process of isolation. Revisited, we've spoken of isolation as a step in brainwashing or cultivating dependence. But the process of isolating someone is itself a meticulous, insidious manipulation. It's not always a sudden severing of ties. Often, it's a gradual, calculated erosion of external support systems, leaving the victim increasingly reliant on the manipulator as their sole source of reality and validation. It might begin subtly. The manipulator expresses concern about your friends. Are you sure they have your best interests at heart? They seem a bit negative. Or your family. Your mother is so controlling. Maybe some distance would be healthy for you. These aren't direct orders to cut ties, but seeds of doubt. Next, they might create conflict, subtly sabotaging your relationships. They might accidentally share a private comment out of context, making a friend angry with you, or create drama that makes interacting with family exhausting. They position themselves as the only one who truly understands you, the only one you can really trust. Over time, the victim's social circle shrinks. They become less likely to confide in others, partly because the manipulator has disparaged them, and partly because they fear the manipulator's reaction. At this stage, the manipulator doesn't need to forbid contact. The victim often self-isolates, believing it's their own choice to avoid drama or negativity. This engineered isolation is critical for deeper manipulation, as it removes external perspectives that could challenge the manipulator's narrative or offer the victim a reality check. Sleep deprivation, weakening the mind's defenses. The body needs sleep. The mind needs sleep. Without it, cognitive functions deteriorate, emotional regulation becomes difficult, and suggestibility skyrockets. Sleep deprivation is not just a consequence of a busy life. It is a deliberate tactic used in coercive control environments, from cults to military interrogations to abusive relationships, to break down an individual's mental and physical resistance. Cults often employ grueling schedules with minimal sleep, filled with lectures, repetitive tasks, or intense emotional sessions. This exhaustion serves multiple purposes. Firstly, a sleep-deprived brain struggles with critical thinking and memory. It becomes harder to question doctrines or spot inconsistencies. Secondly, it heightens emotionality, making individuals more susceptible to charismatic leaders and group fervor. Thirdly, it impairs judgment and willpower, making it easier to indoctrinate new beliefs and enforce compliance. In abusive relationships, a partner might intentionally disrupt the victim's sleep, picking fights late at night, making noise, or demanding attention when the victim is trying to rest. Over time, this chronic sleep deprivation can lead to anxiety, depression, and a diminished ability to cope, making the victim more dependent on the abuser. Interrogators have long known that sleep deprivation can make a suspect more likely to confess, whether truthfully or falsely, simply to end the ordeal. It's a form of physiological torture that dismantles the mind's defenses from within, making the individual vulnerable and malleable. Information control and censorship, shaping reality by omission. What you don't know can hurt you, especially when someone is deliberately controlling the information you receive. Information control, or censorship, is a powerful manipulation tactic used to shape perception, prevent dissent, and maintain authority by limiting access to alternative viewpoints or inconvenient truths. Totalitarian regimes are the most obvious examples, rigorously censoring media, internet access, and educational materials to ensure citizens only receive the state-approved narrative. By creating an information vacuum, they prevent critical thought and make their propaganda seem like the only reality. But this tactic operates in more intimate settings too. In a controlling relationship, a partner might monitor the other's communications, restrict their access to friends or family who might offer differing perspectives, or curate the news and information they receive about the outside world. The goal is to create a closed system where the manipulator's voice is the loudest and most authoritative. Cults often practice extreme information control, forbidding members from reading unapproved literature, contacting former members, or questioning the leader's teachings. This creates an echo chamber where the group's ideology is constantly reinforced, and dissenting views are non-existent or demonized. Information control works by fostering ignorance and dependence. If you only hear one side of the story, you are, by definition, being controlled. The less information you have, the less power you have to make informed decisions or to recognize the manipulation itself. Forced teaming and false intimacy. The us against the world ploy. We're in this together, right? You and I, we're special. We understand things others don't. It's us against them. This is the language of forced teaming or false intimacy, a manipulative tactic where someone creates an artificial sense of closeness, shared experience, or a common enemy to gain trust, elicit compliance, or isolate you. Con artists and scammers often use this at the beginning of an interaction. They might share a usually fabricated personal story, feign shared interests, or create an immediate, we dynamic. People like us need to stick together. This rapid intimacy can feel flattering and disarming, making you lower your guard and trust them more quickly than you otherwise would. In cult recruitment, leaders might emphasize how the group is a family that offers understanding and acceptance that the outside world, the them, cannot provide. This creates a powerful in-group out-group dynamic that fosters loyalty and discourages members from leaving. Abusive partners may also use forced teaming, constantly emphasizing their special bond while simultaneously disparaging your friends and family, creating an us against the world mentality that isolates you. The manipulator positions themselves as your confidant, your ally, the only one who truly gets you. This false intimacy can be very seductive, especially for individuals who feel lonely or misunderstood. However, it's a counterfeit connection designed to foster dependence and control, not genuine partnership. It bypasses the natural, gradual process of building trust and rushes you into a manufactured alliance. The just joking or too sensitive defense. They make a cutting remark, a demeaning joke, or a boundary-violating comment. When you react with hurt or anger, they immediately dismiss your feelings. I was just joking. Can't you take a joke? Or you're being way too sensitive. This is a common manipulative defense designed to invalidate your emotions, avoid accountability for their hurtful behavior, and make you feel like the problem. This tactic is a form of gaslighting. By framing their insult as a joke, they shift the blame to your supposed lack of humor. If they call you too sensitive, they are pathologizing your natural emotional response to their disrespect. It's a double blow. First the insult, then the invalidation of your reaction to it. This allows the manipulator to continuously test boundaries, deliver put-downs, and express passive aggression without facing consequences. They get to say whatever they want, and if you object, you're the one with the issue. Over time, this can lead you to doubt your own judgment and your right to feel upset. You might start suppressing your reactions to avoid being labeled as no fun or overly emotional. This is precisely what the manipulator wants: a partner, friend, or colleague who will tolerate their disrespect without complaint. It's a way of training you to accept their bad behavior. A genuine joke is shared laughter. A disguised insult met with "you're too sensitive" is a red flag for manipulation. Economic abuse. Control through a chokehold on finances. Control can take many forms, and one of the most insidious and debilitating is economic abuse. This is when a manipulator restricts, exploits, or sabotages their victims' financial resources to create dependence, limit their options, and maintain power. It's a silent siege that can leave victims trapped and feeling powerless. Economic abuse can manifest in various ways. The abuser might control all household income, giving the victim an allowance that is insufficient or must be strictly accounted for. They might prevent the victim from working or sabotage their job by harassing them at work, hiding their keys, or causing them to be late. They could accumulate debt in the victim's name without their knowledge, ruin their credit score, or force them to hand over their paycheck. Sometimes, they might make the victim feel guilty for any spending, even on necessities, constantly reminding them of how irresponsible they are with money, even if the abuser is the one overspending. This isn't about responsible financial management. It's about power. By controlling the finances, the manipulator controls the victim's ability to leave, to seek help, or to live independently. The victim may feel trapped, unable to afford housing, legal assistance, or even basic necessities for themselves and their children. Economic abuse often co-occurs with other forms of abuse, creating a complex web of control that is incredibly difficult to escape. It's a calculated stripping away of autonomy, $1 at a time. Spiritual abuse, faith weaponized. Faith can be a source of immense comfort, guidance, and community. But in the wrong hands, religious texts, spiritual beliefs, and positions of authority within a faith can be twisted and weaponized to manipulate, control, and harm. This is spiritual abuse. It occurs when someone uses spiritual or religious language and authority to shame, frighten, or dominate others. A leader might claim to have a direct line to God, implying that to question them is to question God. They might use scripture out of context to justify abusive behavior, demand unquestioning obedience, or enforce rigid, harmful rules. Victims of spiritual abuse are often made to feel that their doubts or suffering are a sign of their own spiritual failing, rather than a valid response to mistreatment. They might be told they lack faith, are possessed by demons, or are displeasing God if they don't comply with the abuser's demands. This can create profound guilt, shame, and a fear of divine punishment, making it incredibly difficult to leave the abusive environment. Spiritual abuse can also involve isolating members from outside influences that might challenge the group's doctrine, controlling their relationships, and dictating minute aspects of their lives under the guise of spiritual discipline. It's a betrayal of trust at the deepest level, where something sacred is perverted into a tool of coercion. Covert contracts, the unspoken, unfair deal. I did all these nice things for you, so you owe me. I expected you to know what I needed without me having to ask. This is the sound of a covert contract, an unspoken, unagreed-upon set of expectations that one person places on another. When these hidden expectations aren't met, and how could they be if they're unspoken? The manipulator feels entitled to resentment, anger, or to exact some form of payment. Unlike a healthy agreement where terms are clear and mutually understood, a covert contract is a one-sided setup for disappointment and guilt. Someone might consistently go out of their way for you, not out of pure generosity, but with the silent expectation that you will reciprocate in a specific way or fulfill a certain role for them. If you fail to meet this hidden agenda, they might act hurt, accuse you of being ungrateful, or withdraw affection. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. The everything I've done was part of their unspoken contract, which you never signed. This tactic puts the other person in a constant state of trying to guess the manipulator's needs and desires, often feeling like they're walking on eggshells. It fosters guilt because you feel like you're always falling short of an invisible standard. Healthy relationships are built on open communication and explicit agreements. Covert contracts are about unearned entitlement and emotional leverage, creating a dynamic where one person is always in debt to the other's unspoken demands. Proxy recruitment and flying monkeys, outsourcing the abuse. The manipulator doesn't always get their hands dirty directly. Sometimes they enlist others, knowingly or unknowingly, to do their bidding, to spread their narrative, or to harass their target. These recruits are often called flying monkeys, a term referencing the wicked witch's minions in The Wizard of Oz. This is the tactic of proxy recruitment, where the manipulator uses third parties to extend their control and abuse. A narcissistic individual, for example, when a relationship is ending, might spread rumors about their ex to mutual friends, family, or even colleagues. These flying monkeys, then, believing the manipulator's distorted story, might pressure the ex to reconcile, ostracize them, or relay information back to the narcissist. The manipulator maintains an image of innocence. I haven't even spoken to them, while their proxies carry out the campaign of harassment or manipulation. This tactic is incredibly effective because it isolates the victim further. Not only are they dealing with the primary abuser, but they now face a chorus of criticism or pressure from people they may have once trusted. It can make the victim feel like they are the problem, or that the whole world is against them. The flying monkeys often genuinely believe they are helping or doing the right thing. As they've been fed a carefully crafted, one-sided story by the charismatic manipulator, this allows the manipulator to inflict damage from a distance, often without appearing directly involved, making it harder for the victim to prove the abuse or find support. Normalizing abuse. The boiling frog phenomenon. If you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will immediately jump out. But if you place it in lukewarm water and gradually increase the temperature, the frog will slowly boil to death, never perceiving the danger until it's too late. This gruesome analogy illustrates how manipulators normalize abuse by introducing it so gradually that the victim adapts to increasingly toxic behavior, often without recognizing the escalating danger. It rarely starts with overt aggression. Instead, it begins with small boundary violations, subtle put-downs disguised as jokes, or minor controlling behaviors. Each incident, taken in isolation, might seem insignificant or excusable. Maybe I am overreacting. They didn't mean it that way. The victim makes small adjustments, tolerates a little more, rationalizes the behavior. As their tolerance increases, the manipulator subtly escalates the abuse. What was once unthinkable slowly becomes the new normal. Constant criticism, yelling, intense jealousy, isolation from friends. These become part of the relationship's fabric. Because the changes are incremental, the victim's baseline for what is acceptable shifts over time. They may look back and be horrified at what they now endure, but in the moment, each step seemed like a small, manageable compromise. This is why people stay in abusive situations that, to an outsider, seem obviously intolerable. They didn't sign up for the abuse at its peak. They were slowly conditioned to accept it, 1 degree at a time. Pathologizing. You're not reacting, you're ill. You express a valid concern, and they tell you you're paranoid. You get upset by their disrespect, and they diagnose you as emotionally unstable or having anger issues. You try to set a boundary, and they accuse you of being codependent or having trust issues. This is pathologizing, a manipulative tactic where someone dismisses your valid thoughts, feelings, or reactions by labeling them as symptoms of a mental illness or personality flaw. This is a particularly insidious form of gaslighting. Instead of addressing the issue you've raised, the manipulator shifts the focus to your supposed psychological inadequacy. This serves several purposes. It allows them to evade responsibility for their behavior. It undermines your credibility, both to yourself and to others. And it can make you doubt your own sanity. If you're constantly told that your reactions are crazy or irrational, you might start to believe it. This is common in abusive dynamics. An abuser might say, "No wonder your last partner left you. You're impossible to deal with because you're so," insert psychological label. They are essentially rewriting reality to suggest that their abuse is a natural consequence of your flaws. Over time, the victim might internalize these labels, leading to a decrease in self-esteem and an increased reliance on the manipulator's assessment of them. It's a way of controlling someone by convincing them that their internal compass is broken, and only the manipulator can tell them what's normal. Boundary testing, the probing of defenses, relationships, whether personal or professional, rely on boundaries, the invisible lines that define what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Manipulators, however, view boundaries not as respected limits, but as challenges to be systematically tested and dismantled. Boundary testing is the gradual, often subtle, process of pushing against someone's limits to see how much they will tolerate. It might start small. A slightly inappropriate joke, a comment that's a little too personal, showing up unannounced, or borrowing something without asking. If these initial probes are met with no resistance or only mild discomfort, the manipulator learns that this boundary is permeable. They will then push a little further next time. A late-night call becomes regular late-night demands. A borrowed item isn't returned. A joke becomes a consistent put-down. Each successful test emboldens the manipulator and erodes the victim's resolve. The victim might rationalize each incident. It's not a big deal. I don't want to cause a fuss. But the cumulative effect is a significant shift in power. Healthy individuals respect boundaries. Manipulators see them as temporary obstacles. They are constantly assessing how much they can get away with. If you consistently give in or fail to enforce your boundaries, you are teaching them that your limits are negotiable, and eventually, that you have no limits they are obliged to respect. This creates a pathway for more significant forms of manipulation and abuse. The silent treatment, weaponized absence. Sometimes, the most powerful manipulation isn't in what is said, but in what is not said. The silent treatment, the deliberate withdrawal of communication, affection, or presence, is a passive-aggressive tactic used to punish, control, and create anxiety in the target. It's an emotional siege that can be incredibly damaging. When someone gives you the silent treatment, they are essentially making you invisible, denying your existence in their immediate world. This can trigger profound feelings of rejection, anxiety, and confusion. You might rack your brain trying to figure out what you did wrong, replaying conversations, desperate to understand the cause of their withdrawal. This is exactly what the manipulator wants. Your distress gives them a sense of power. The silence forces you to focus entirely on them and their unspoken displeasure. To break the silence, you might apologize, even if you've done nothing wrong, make concessions, or beg for their attention, thereby rewarding their manipulative behavior. The silent treatment is a way to exert control without direct confrontation. The manipulator avoids discussing the issue, avoids taking responsibility, and instead makes you feel responsible for repairing the breach they created. It's a form of emotional blackmail where the currency is communication itself. In healthy relationships, people communicate their feelings and work through disagreements. The silent treatment is a refusal to engage, a punitive act designed to make you crumble. Circular conversations and word salad. The maze of confusion. You try to address a problem, ask for clarity, or resolve a conflict, but instead of a direct answer, you're met with a barrage of unrelated accusations, diversions, nonsensical statements, and arguments that go around in circles, never reaching a resolution. This is the tactic of circular conversations, or word salad, designed to confuse, frustrate, and exhaust you until you give up. When you're in a circular conversation, you might find yourself constantly defending against new, irrelevant points, losing track of your original concern. The manipulator will twist your words, bring up past, often unrelated grievances, or respond with statements that are illogical or simply don't make sense. The goal is not to communicate or resolve, but to disorient and overwhelm. If you try to pin them down on a specific point, they'll slip away, introducing another red herring or accusing you of being confused or difficult. This can be incredibly effective at shutting down legitimate complaints. After a while, you become so mentally fatigued and frustrated that continuing the conversation feels pointless. You might concede just to make it stop, or simply withdraw, leaving the issue unresolved and the manipulator in control. This tactic is a hallmark of individuals who want to avoid accountability. By turning a discussion into an impenetrable maze of confusion, they ensure that their behavior is never truly addressed, and you are left feeling unheard and often doubting your own ability to communicate effectively. Threats, veiled and overt intimidation. It would be a shame if something happened to your reputation. You wouldn't want to make me angry. Or, more directly, if you leave, you'll never see the children again. Threats, whether veiled or overt, are a primal form of manipulation designed to control behavior through fear. Overt threats are straightforward declarations of intended harm if a demand is not met. They create immediate fear and often leave little room for negotiation. But veiled threats can be even more insidious. They are implied, suggested, or hinted at, allowing the manipulator to deny any malicious intent if confronted. "I never said I would do that. You're just imagining things." Yet the underlying message of potential harm is clearly received by the victim. A veiled threat might be a warning about the dangers of a certain course of action, a subtle reminder of past negative consequences, or a comment about what could happen. This creates an atmosphere of anxiety and intimidation, where the victim feels pressured to comply to avoid an unspecified, but understood negative outcome. Threats work by short-circuiting rational thought and activating survival instincts. When you feel threatened, your priority shifts from what is right or what you want to what will keep you safe. This makes you highly susceptible to the manipulator's demands. Whether it's a threat of physical harm, emotional abandonment, financial ruin, or reputational damage, the underlying mechanism is the same: instilling fear to achieve compliance. Stalking and cyberstalking, the omnipresent gaze of control, the feeling of being watched, monitored, your every move tracked. This isn't just a plot from a thriller. It's the reality of stalking and cyberstalking, extreme forms of manipulation designed to instill fear, exert control, and destroy a victim's sense of safety and autonomy. Stalking can involve physically following someone, showing up uninvited at their home or workplace, sending unwanted gifts or messages, or making persistent, unwelcome contact. Cyberstalking extends this into the digital realm, monitoring social media activity, hacking accounts, sending harassing emails or texts, using spyware to track location or communications, or spreading rumors and private information online. The goal of the stalker is often to maintain a connection with or power over the victim, especially after a rejection or breakup. The constant surveillance creates an intense psychological burden. The victim lives in a state of hypervigilance, never knowing when the next contact or intrusion will occur. This can lead to severe anxiety, paranoia, depression, and PTSD. It's a profound violation of privacy and personal boundaries, making the victim feel like they have no safe space. Stalking isn't about love or misguided affection. It's about obsession and control. The stalker often disregards the victim's fear and distress, sometimes even interpreting it as a sign of the victim's strong feelings for them. It's a terrifying demonstration of how a manipulator can use persistent, unwanted attention as a weapon to dominate and terrorize. The shadows of the mind are deep, and the ways influence can be twisted are many. But awareness is the first light. By understanding these tactics, we empower ourselves not to use them, but to recognize them, to resist them, and to protect the sanctity of our own will. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darker aspects of human psychology.